View with the guest of the day. I am joined by a research associate professor of political behavior at the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, University of Lagos, Kayode Eesuola, for discussion on new Students' Loan Act and matters arising. Thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you. So let's start with how the new administration has fared. What's your assessment of the government so far?
Well, are you asking me to assess the government based on the student's loan or in its generality?
Generally, for now.
It's all right. When a new government comes on board, you need time to be able to assess and understand the dimension it is moving. But on a spot, one thing that I am worried about is the approach of suffer first before you enjoy. Nigerian people were seriously dehumanized, and that happened in the 8 years of the rule of President Buhari. Inflation was appalling, poverty went to the highest level, and it was difficult, if not impossible, for anyone to live and live decently. Matter of factly, Nigerians, including the intellectual class to which I belong, Nigerians never lived for the past 8 years. They merely existed. I think when you meet people at this point and you become a new president, what you should do is allow them some breathing space before you begin to implement policies that may add further hardship to them. This is not to say that I don't understand the dimension that the new government is going to, but then the approach matters, the methodology matters. If you are building road for me, you are building infrastructure for me, and I have to die first because those roads are completed before the infrastructure is completed, then what is the essence? That's the logicality. I think, as a matter of advice, the government needs to consider a much better approach of giving Nigerian people a space to breathe first before doubling and tripling the hardship that they have faced for the past 8 years. I hope the new government will do well. I am a stand believer in the ability of the president to bring together best brains across the country to be able to run the economy very well. But I do not think this approach is very good for the government. People need to live before they enjoy whatever growth that the government is going to bring. I think the approach is this problem. And I think the federal government needs to listen and reconsider the approach.
All right. So apart from the economy, education is another key sector for development. How will you describe the new administration's approach to the sector?
Well, I have not seen any major policy that has been made and implemented into the educational sector. But I will also not deny two principal dimensions to it. One is the declaration by the federal government that government will no longer be able to fund university education. That to me is a very solemn statement. You can have 1,001 interpretations to it. So until the details are out, we will not be able to know what government means by to no longer be able to fund university education. That being said, there's a part to it that appears clearer to the Nigerian public, and that is the part of government offering Nigerian people the students' loan. And in principle, that's a very, very much commendable effort on the part of the federal government and the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria. People went to school in the 70s and the 60s did so either on loan or on bursary. So now that you have crisis in the educational sector, coming back to student loan is a welcome development. However, I have taken time to study the loan, and to me, I identify three fundamental problems. And these problems I think the federal government needs to address. Number one, when you say this loan is designed for Nigerian people whose income is below 500,000 naira in a year. If you divide that by 12 months, what you get is 42,000 naira. And it shocks me to the bone marrow that are there Nigerians today who still earn that amount of money in this economy, in a country where a bag of rice is 45,000 naira? If there is such class, I think the Nigerian government should think about eliminating that class, not to retain that class within the system that we have. Okay? So I don't think that the idea of making policy for a class that should not even exist in the first place, I don't think it's a good policy. The Nigerian government, as at now, should not tolerate any class in Nigeria that will not earn up to 500,000 per annum. That class should be eliminated and upgraded to a class that can live within the political system. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the loan that we're talking about, what you see is that it has fundamentally excluded everybody in the formal structure in Nigeria. I don't think in the federal government structure or in the state government structure, I don't think even the cleaner or the messenger earns below 42,000 naira in a month. So if the policy is not likely to benefit the cleaner, the messenger, the clerical officer, the middle level, civil servants, the younger lecturers in the university, the question is, who is the policy going to serve? It means that the policy is strictly created or made for a class that is not known within the formal structure. And the danger of that is that it will be impossible to track such people. So you will not have data and statistics on the number of people who have been able to get that loan and, of course, hold them accountable. That man is probably on the street who belongs to that class. When he gets the loan and he refuses to pay back, how do you bring him into account? The third one, I think it does not make good sense when you say that this policy is for the poor, and then you raise the stakes so high to the extent that you need a level 14 public officer or a professor or a very big lawyer to sign for you.
All right, Prof.
How many of the people in Nigeria today who don't earn 42,000 in a month will have access to a level 14 officer in their family, in their friend circle, and all of this?
All right, Prof.
So
these are very valid.
Is beautiful. This is the time to face the reality of the fact that we may need to fund education in many alternatives. However, the specific one that has been sold to the public does not look realistic. And this is what happens when you make policies without involving the stakeholders. The last time I checked, the Academic Staff Union of Nigerian University is not involved, was not involved in the discussion of this policy. I have interacted with members of the National Association of Nigerian Students, many of them.
Prof, can you hear me? All right, tonight you're speaking with Research Associate Professor of Political Behavior at the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, University of Lagos, Professor Eesuola. Tonight we're discussing the new Students' Loan Act and matters arising. I mean, there are so many factors about this loan. Prof, if you're there, can you hear me now? All right, so if you can hear me, I mean, you've raised a very valid point, but generally speaking now, how significant is this to education sector in the country? All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, this conversation will continue. Please stay with us.